The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Let's go. What a weekend. As we've got some news on the ongoing investigation with Tennessee and the NCAA, i.e. Jeremy Pruitt. Also, talk a little bit of Grant Williams as he was named VP of the Players Union. Where does he rank among the all-time best? And some unknown Vols out of left field because it looked like I won the NBA Slam Dunk Contest. The guy had similar ability, looked goofy like me. So there we go. Tennessee picks up a commitment, and Marcus Goree Jr. We'll discuss him. So there is a lot going on today. But as you might imagine, we start with Tennessee basketball. And again, I'll tell you, Caleb, I do not pretend to be an X's and O's master. I don't pretend to be a betting trend guy, but I had a weird feeling they would show up flat just like last week. I thought that they would show up and play really well against Alabama. I honestly can't remember if I said on the show, but I talked to my son and wife about it on Friday. And I just had a weird feeling that Wednesday against Alabama was not a turning of the corner. It was just one of the ups and downs and what has become a very up and down sort of basketball season. So I'm not surprised that Tennessee didn't play well against Kentucky. Before we get into whether or not the Vols were figured out, how are you this morning, and what did you think as a synopsis of the game?
I'm doing pretty well. I got to give you a shout out, Dave. You called it. You called Alabama upset and Tennessee coming out flat this past weekend. Honestly, it was shocking to me that Tennessee was even favored against Kentucky, which threw me off because I thought playing at Kentucky, given the way the season has gone, look, I'm going to get to Tennessee in a minute, but this is somewhat par for the course for college basketball this year. You know, fans will sit there and celebrate and say, it's so much parity. It's so great. No, it's not. It's so much mediocrity. It's just a bunch of really bad teams fighting to be the champion, fighting to be the tallest kid in kindergarten. That's college basketball this year. And it's horrible to watch. You know, Maryland, the day after Tennessee upset number 1 Alabama, upset number 2 Purdue, and then Maryland just lost to Nebraska on the road last night. So this has been happening across the nation. It seems like nobody knows how to play on the road. And so I think this is you say they came out flat. I don't think they came out flat. I think there's just a significant underlying problem with their offense that's been going on, and I wrote about this last night, that's been going on since the first time they played against Kentucky. They've been figured out on offense, and they have made no adjustments since Kentucky figured them out.
Probably a better way to put it. I agree with that. I just thought that if a team's trending in the right way, they're able to generate points in clutch situations. They hit their free throws when they have to, and that to me was kind of the coming out flat part. You didn't really cure anything on Wednesday, right? You put a Band-Aid on it, and I think that's kind of what I was getting at. But you're right, figured out. Quite possibly. That leads us to today's tough question. It is now today's tough question. We appreciate the guys on the message board already this morning as we're with you live each and every weekday at 10 a.m. So before I get to today's tough question, do want to throw out some comments. Travis says, good morning. John says, can someone start free throw throwing underhand free throws? Maybe they can make those better. I'm reminded of the Shaquille O'Neal story where he was asked to start doing underhanded free throws at LSU. Who is his coach? I'm sure you remember.
I don't know who his coach was.
Dale something.
Not Dale Harris?
I know you can find it. But anyway, he said, if you can hit 70% during practice, then I'm not going to make you shoot free throws underhanded. And he did. He hit 72% in a practice. Out of 100 free throws, he hit 72. And it was just getting in front of players or getting in front of fans. And I don't know that that's Tennessee's fault, but something is going on because their free throw shooting, be it underhanded or not, has a real issue. But these guys can actually shoot. Today's tough question is now.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Real simple. Put it on the message board. Give me your thoughts. Has this Tennessee basketball team been figured out? Is it just that simple? Cut and dry. Today's tough question brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn Vision Center that is all about those in Knoxville and taking care of people with a local touch because they mean it. They want you to feel fantastic and see better than ever before. It was sunny on Saturday, and I was just enjoying my far away vision. I had LASIK, and it's just phenomenal. So we're going to address the near vision, too, and take care of the readers. So I love Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. They're right there in Knoxville. And, again, they're local. Cataract surgery, regular eye day, whatever the case may be. You can go get your eyes checked at Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn in their various vision centers. So let me just put it out there. Has this Tennessee basketball team been figured out? And when I ask that question, Caleb, I want to provide the caveat that if they've been figured out, there's really no going back for Tennessee. It's not as if they stumbled. It's not as if they've had issues. It's not as if they could switch things up. Figured out to me means that they've got a real problem in that there's really no fixing it if college basketball has figured them out. So with that caveat, I ask you that. Have they been figured out?
On offense, yes. No one's figured out their defense, and that's fine because that's why they'll still be able to pull off upsets like last week against Alabama. But their offense has been absolutely figured out. And I just for Ron Slay, if he's watching, I'm going to sip a little bit.
I've never known anybody that enjoys getting a take right as much as you.
I'm a very humble guy, guys. Okay, so anyways, I wrote. So if you remember, Tennessee lost to Kentucky the first time. Everybody thought that was a fluke. Everybody's like, they just came. Even me, myself, I'll be honest. I thought it was a fluke. Tennessee came out flat. It was a Saturday. They were retiring Chris Lofton's jersey. It was their first. It was only their second loss, and we're thinking not that big of a deal. We had Burt Bertelkamp on like 3 days later, and I think it was Burt Bertelkamp that actually pointed out. Maybe it was somebody else, but he was the one who pointed out to me that Kentucky was staying on the perimeter and not collapsing whenever Tennessee threw it down low.
He was the first one to say that. You're right. Yeah.
Okay. He was the first one to say that. Tennessee wins their next 4, including against number 10 Texas. I wrote after their win over Texas that this is a concern because, yes, they're on a 4-game winning streak with their defense, but does anybody notice there's been a massive dip in their three-point shooting? A massive dip, and that there's going to be a problem long-term. Well, since that Texas win, they've lost 4 of 6, 3 of their last 4, just got swept by Kentucky. Offense has been terrible, and this is the problem. Every team is now saying, you know what? We'll let you have your little inside game. We'll let you throw it down to Russ or Olivia or whoever. We're staying on the perimeter, and we're going to make Santi Vescovi shoot with a guy in his face. We're going to make Tyreek Key shoot with a guy in his face. We're going to just keep doing that. And they have not been able to figure out how to get past that, quite honestly. And I think they've been figured out. I think the real truth of the matter is we're seeing Tennessee's three-point shooters are not Chris Lofton or even Jawan Smith, which is to say they can't hit threes when they're guarded. They can't hit threes with a hand in their face, and that's a big problem.
No, they can't, and they're not great open either because now they're starting to think about it a little bit more. Same thing at the free throw line. I think the most frustrating thing right now, Caleb, is I think if you just put them in the gym all by themselves, they'd be good shooters. And I just don't think they're good shooters now because it's in their head. So have they figured themselves out or have they been figured out? I think it's a little bit of both. I think they're in their own heads right now. And a late free throw that needs to be clutch is absolutely something that Tennessee is not good at. And I don't think they're going to be good at it anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, outside of Tyreek and Santi, though, like, who is that good of a shooter on this team? And Tyreek has been awful. So I would agree it's in Tyreek's head. It's totally in Tyreek's head right now. And it's obviously in Santi's head too. Outside of those two, it's hard for me to say it's in their head because I don't think anybody on this team is that good of a shooter, if I'm being honest with you. I think that Rick Barnes recruited guys who have a solid mid-range, big guys who can play underneath the basket, and a lot of guys who can slash to the basket like Zakai Ziegler. Well, that's unless you're doing the dribble drive like John Calipari, that's not really a formula for winning as much in the NBA now. In college basketball nowadays. And I just don't know if you can. I don't think you can fix it overnight. There's no amount of scheming you can do except for relying on guys to hit shots, and Tennessee just doesn't have enough shooters on this team.
Agree. Hit that like button. We want to get more people as part of the program, and that gets us out there on YouTube. So hit the like button if you haven't subscribed yet. Please do that, as we've got a lot of things to get to. So moving forward, how have you adjusted over the past 2 weeks? Since Caleb was one of kind of the first to say that this offense may be figured out, that Tennessee does not play a style of offense that is conducive to NCAA tournament play. So where do you see this team finishing in March? Do you have a feel for that at this point?
I'm pretty convinced that they're not getting past the first weekend now. I mean, if every game you're playing, you can't buy an outside bucket anymore. I mean, you don't play more than 2 games in the tournament where at least one team is playing well offensively. And there's no amount of defense that you can play that'll slow that down. So, I mean, I think best case scenario, Tennessee makes it to Saturday or Sunday. I don't see them. I don't see how they make it to the Sweet 16 anymore or beyond that.
No, I had them out first weekend, even before the Alabama game. So, so far you've got at A&M left, South Carolina at home, Arkansas at home, and then at Auburn. How do you think they finish out those last 4? I'm going to go ahead and say 2-2 at best. I'm
going to go 2-2. I'll be fair. You could see 1-3, by the way, because
sure you could.
I'm sorry.
Sure you could. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Like I think they'll beat South Carolina at home. I think the home crowd will help them beat Arkansas. I got them losing both road games. I don't think they can. I got them losing both games on the road, and that's the thing. Their last 2 wins are Alabama and Auburn, which is a number 1 win and a top 25 win, but they didn't feel like top 25 wins. That Auburn game was the most atrocious basketball I think I've ever watched in years. I mean, the Alabama game was more. Alabama committed a lot of turnovers. I just think at Auburn and at A&M, I don't think they're winning either of those.
Today's tough question brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. We get to 4 downs now. 4 downs, talking Tennessee basketball as we continue. Want to get your thoughts on these questions. So please go ahead and provide your answers on the message board now.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Speaking of 4, Tiger in a little bit of trouble over the weekend, but I don't want to get into that. I find the whole thing uncomfortable and what he handed one of his fellow players. So 4 downs focuses on basketball, brought to you by Zach England. Best and Brock. Zach can go toe-to-toe with those insurance companies and their highfalutin attorneys, as they used to call them in the South. He can go toe-to-toe, get you the money you deserve on your personal injury case. That's Zach England of Best and Brock. Zach's got your back. So 4 downs. And I thought this about 3 weeks ago, but I didn't want it to sound stupid. Because it would sound stupid to say, should Tennessee replace Rick Barnes, right? He's had too great of a career to even consider making a move. Would you agree with that, Caleb? Right. Okay. Now, that being said, I have been around programs in which I felt like the coach lost a little something, i.e. Jerry Green. And my question about Rick Barnes is, does it feel at all like he might retire after this season? Because some of the answers have been a little snippy as far as this is what we're going to do, and all I care about is wins. And I wrote about that on Friday, and he just doesn't seem to want to deviate. Stuck in his ways, possibly, but also frustrated at times. And you don't see that out of a Rick Barnes press conference. So 4 downs. What do you think of the chances that Rick Barnes retires after this season? This is nothing that I'm reporting. It's nothing I've even heard. I will be very transparent with news that we break on this show. This is nothing I've even heard. It just has that feel to me for some reason. Pure speculation, Caleb.
I don't think he retires because Tennessee has 2 4-stars committed for 2023, plus Cade Phillips out of Jacksonville, a 3-star. So he's still red hot on the recruiting trail. Rick Barnes is giving me, ready for these vibes, Dave, you'll love this. He's the college basketball version, I feel like, of Mark Richt.
And that's a great comparison.
Yeah, remember how Mark Richt Georgia just felt they were in the running every year, but they just felt they had gotten stale under Mark Richt. That was Texas for Rick Barnes. Rick leaves, go to Miami, kind of has the same problems, and then after 3 or 4 years at Miami, he's like, I'm out. I'm tired of this. I'm retiring. And I could see Rick Barnes being that, like Tennessee being his Miami, but he is recruiting well on the trail. I think Barnes genuinely likes the coaching part of the game more than a lot of people, and he's one of my issues with Barnes for years is that I don't think he does this on purpose. I think when Tennessee loses, I think Barnes feels like it's understood that he made mistakes and that he didn't do a good job coaching. So he immediately goes to what his players did wrong and everything like that. And I get it, players do things wrong, but it gives off very much like the same vibes Jimbo Fisher gives off whenever Texas A&M loses and Jimbo Fisher's like, well, we just didn't execute. That's code for I did my job calling the plays and my players didn't deliver for me. And
you're saying he throws his players under the bus. You're saying it in the nicest way possible. He throws his players under the bus.
Right.
I mean, he just does. I think you're almost being too kind in some sense.
You're right. He does. And I think the way he does it is he thinks it's understood that he messed up, but he has to talk about what his players did. And by the way, have you ever noticed when Tennessee wins, Barnes is still not that complimentary of his players when they win. He's still like, oh, we could have done this better. And, we need them to do this. And I'm like, I feel like to a certain degree, it's like, if you're a player, that's got to wear on you. Can you not just say, I'm really proud of the job you guys did today?
John saying, I will enjoy when Barnes has been replaced with a more offensive-minded coach. Barnes is great, and specifically a great man, a la Rick. But, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Georgia didn't want to fire Mark Richt. And if South Carolina hadn't made a real run and almost hired Kirby Smart, they wouldn't have replaced Mark Richt. But what did they do when they decided to? The president got on a plane and flew to where Mark Richt was recruiting up north to tell him personally. So it's that type of situation. It's that type of bond and respect for the job he's done. And again, no one on this show or at Off the Hook Sports is saying that Rick Barnes should be fired. I get this weird feeling in my gut that at the end of the year, he could say, I'm good. I've had enough. Would it be good for Tennessee if Rick Barnes retired? That's second down. Good for Tennessee if Rick Barnes retires?
I mean, that's so dependent on who they are going to get, but I would say just in a vacuum, 50-50 chance, no. And the reason I say that is, look, when Georgia moved on from Mark Richt, we've talked about this. Georgia's a program where you and I can get a top 5 recruiting class. It's an easy job. They should be competing for national championships every single year. Tennessee basketball, what's the best Tennessee basketball has ever been? We're not talking about a program that's gone to the Final Four ever. And so with Tennessee basketball, all you can really ask is that you're in the NCAA tournament every year. And I think that, it's not Kentucky. I know you brought up Jerry Green, and Jerry Green was in the NCAA tournament every year, but I think you and I both agree, had Jerry Green stayed about 2 more years, Tennessee would have been a team with a losing record because Green didn't care to coach. And
true. And had there been about a dozen other coaches, Tennessee would have been in the Final Four a couple of those years.
yeah, exactly. So I think that, look, Green walked in. To his credit, Green did put together a great recruiting class in '99, and he got Vincent Yarbrough in '98. But he had 3 years worth of Kevin O'Neill recruits handed into his lap.
Yes.
When he took over.
I'm going to go. We're disagreeing a lot, which I guess is good for debate. But I'm not even playing devil's advocate here. I think if with Danny White in place, he would hire a very good coach to great coach, maybe an up-and-coming guy. I think they would be more offensive-minded just because they would want to change the tenor of the way the program feels. It's not Tennessee football where you can just throw out the power T and recruit at that level, but it's kind of close with Thompson Bowling Arena, with the Pratt Pavilion, with the facilities, with playing in the SEC, which has more panache nowadays when compared to the ACC and the former Big East and all that stuff. I mean, it has more panache than it used to. So I think because of Tennessee, and you can hop on a plane at any time you want to, I think Tennessee can recruit on a high level. I'm not comparing it to football whatsoever, but I think that Tennessee, with a competent coach, could continue to recruit as well as Barnes. I'm not going to say better, because then you're talking about the Kentuckys, the Dukes of the world, but I think they would be right there. So I got a lot of respect for Rick Barnes, and it kind of pains me to say this, but if the question is that good for UT? Yeah, I think they could use a fresh face on that program. And so I will say, yeah, if Rick Barnes decided to retire, that would be good for Tennessee. Now, I'm not saying that he should, and Tennessee's in a great position. It's a bird in the hand, two in the bush, but I think there's potential because of Danny White for Tennessee to do even better in basketball year in and year out. And I think we're going to be having this same discussion, Caleb, in a year or two if Rick Barnes stays. It's going to be a defensive program. That's what they do. I don't think he's going to up and go tempo like Nick Saban did with Lane Kiffin. I don't see that happening. Third down. Would his tenure at UT be deemed a success without a Final Four at Tennessee? Yay or nay?
I hate to sound like the biggest Rick Barnes defender now because I'm not, but yay, because relative to what Tennessee basketball has done in the past, and who's a Tennessee basketball he's the first Tennessee basketball coach to last more than 6 years since Don DeVoe. And in that 6 years, he's won an SEC regular season title. He's won an SEC tournament title. He's gotten Tennessee to the Sweet 16. He got them a 30-win season, and he got them to finish number one. I mean, not to finish. He got them to number one year. What has he done that any other Tennessee coach? What has he not done that any other Tennessee coach did outside of Bruce Pearl reaching the Elite Eight 1 year? Which credit to Bruce on that. But you compare him to any other Tennessee coaches. You got Ray Mears and Bruce Pearl. Those are the only two coaches that have a case over Rick Barnes, and Rick Barnes might have a case over both of them too, given what he's done over 8 years.
No question. Completely agree. It's a tenure. It's a successful tenure, even if the Vols get bounced out of the first round of the NCAA tournament this year. And if that were the end of it, it's a successful tenure. I completely agree with you because of the backdrop at Tennessee. If he were at Duke, we'd be having a different discussion. All right. Should the Vols go after a Bruce Pearl if Rick Barnes did retire after this season?
No. And my answer would have been different 8 years ago when, Quanzo Martin left for Cal right after Bruce Pearl was hired at Auburn. If it had just been like a month before, I would have said hire Bruce Pearl back. Now, I totally say no. People don't understand this. Bruce Pearl's been figured out too. That flex offense has been figured out. That up-tempo press system that he came to the SEC, that he took by firestorm in 2005, 2006, has been figured out. A lot of the SEC runs tempo now. Nate Oates and his tempo system is much more fashionable than what Bruce Pearl ran, which was again developed by Dr. Tom Davis like 40 years ago and has won one national title, and that was Gary Williams at Maryland in 2002. That's point number one. Point number two is we talked about the Bruce Pearl barbecue scandal, but on top of that, he's gotten in trouble at Auburn. And you've mentioned a few other shady things to me, Dave, that has happened.
Yes.
And I think that Tennessee one had to fire Bruce Pearl because of that. Then they had Donnie Tyndall come in, and they had to fire him after a year because of that. They can't afford to bring Bruce Pearl back. And these type of NCAA investigations, they just keep building on each other. And no, I wouldn't bring Bruce Pearl back at all. I would not touch him.
I wouldn't either. I couldn't bring back a guy that lied to the university and lied to the NCAA as much as I love Bruce on a personal level. Travis saying, if we went to the Final Four, do you still feel this way? Do I feel that? Well, in some ways, I feel that Rick Barnes might be more likely to retire if he made the Final Four or won a national title. I think that's kind of what he's waiting on. And Travis, I want to be really, really clear. I do not in any shape, form, or fashion think that he should be replaced. I just, he's 68 years old, and I wonder at some point, does he say this grind, and especially the type of college basketball he knows is not the type that's winning right now. I wonder if he says to himself, man, I can't wait for this cycle, because all sports are cycles, and I can't wait for a defensive cycle to come back because I'm 68 years old. So, no, Travis, I don't want him gone. I think Tennessee's in great shape with him. As for the Pearl question, no, I wouldn't do that. I don't think he's the hot commodity that he was when he was at Tennessee. I agree with Caleb on that. But just the line to the NCAA and what that could cause and what that did to Tennessee, and really putting the then athletic director Mike Hamilton over a barrel was just brutal. Vols all-time list coming up next as Grant Williams, man, he's had a fantastic career, named the VP of the Players Union. So where do the Vols rank in terms of, or where does Grant Williams rank in terms of the greatest Vols of all time? And then at some point I want to get into a little Tennessee baseball and why this weekend was not the end of the world. But what in the H is the compliance office doing and not having a player ready to go that's been on campus since like August? Unbelievable. Just blows me away. So stay tuned. We are back in 2 minutes. Scott says Barnes can't get the most out of his talent. We'll discuss that. 2 minutes. Off the Hook Sports. Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
Family has been creating jewelry since 1986. Each piece unique, with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Inflation has risen to the highest level in over 40 years, according to the April 2022 U.S. Inflation Calculator. Will your investments provide you the income you need in retirement? Are you losing purchasing power of your savings due to inflation? Simply stated, if the cost of goods and services are 8% higher and you're only earning 4% in your investments, that money buys you less of what you need. Right now is the time to act. Call Guardian Investment Advisors today.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here. I want to personally invite you to North Knoxville's newest sports bar and restaurant.
It's Big Orange Phillies, located in Black Oak Center. And yes folks, it's happening in Halls. Big Orange Phillies offers family-friendly environment with homemade meals and the best deli-style subs around. Billiards, darts, jukebox, shuffleboard, and cornhole, and a full bar. We also offer valet parking on weekends and during special events. We even have a covered back patio. It's happening at Big Orange Phillies. We want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air. Dare to compare.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm.
And finalists for best law firm and best personal injury firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down. Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Really proud of the app. If you haven't downloaded it yet, we'd appreciate that. And we've just been working on it since like 2014. So, holy Hannah. That was something else. We put on a whole show and hired 8 people before we could get the app to work. Scott says Barnes can't get the most out of his talent. Fair? Caleb?
What does getting the most out of mean? He gets the most out of them in that he develops them to the point where they can maximize their NBA potential. I'm gonna give him that. I mean, he turned Tristan Thompson into an NBA star. When Tristan Thompson is not out here cheating on Khloe Kardashian, he was actually a reliable defensive player. And Tristan had a huge role in the Cavs winning that finals in 2016. So in that regard, he develops them. In terms of like getting the most out of the talent he has for team success, I agree. And it goes back to the debate. Do you prefer a coach who schemes better or who maximizes talent better in college? It's kind of, or who develops talent better in college. That's the old David Cutcliffe for me. Like I said, David Cutcliffe versus Steve Spurrier.
I'd rather have the guy who gets people winning in college. John said top 5 based, or talking about Grant Williams. That's where we're going to change directions here. Top 5 based on impact on the program or best basketball talent, maybe both, because I'd have different lists based on the criteria. So Grant Williams named to the VP of the Players Union, which is a pretty good stroke, man. That's a sign that you're a leader. That's a sign that people want to rally behind you. So good for him, the former Vol with the Boston Celtics. And I'm still shocked how good he is for the Celtics. I'm a Celtics fan. So try to make plans to go see them at in Philadelphia this weekend because I'll be up north. But unfortunately, that didn't work out because tickets are expensive. And I don't realize how far these cities are from each other. Caleb knows because he lives up there. I thought that Hartford might be kind of close to Philadelphia. It's like a 5-hour drive. So I'm not doing that.
Also, $200 worth of tolls. Because, you don't have tolls in the South. You got them all in the Northeast.
John says, as far as Barnes, I'd rather be teased and throw my arms up every year in futility. And Travis already has Grant Williams at number 4. So I ask you this. Grant Williams, where does he rank among the all-time Tennessee Vols? And it's brought to you by Zul Beer Company, xulbeer.com. Zul Beer, worldwide award-winning craft beer, parking downtown. You're going to love it. Great place to hang out, a panoramic view of downtown. So where does Grant Williams rank? And let me begin with you because I know you're pretty high on him and his impact and his standing in the program. So lay it on me.
Ranking him 4th, I might put him 3rd. I might put him, this is just production in college, I might put him ahead of Allen Houston. I mean, I'm going to say it. I could even put him 2nd behind Bernard King. Yeah, I'm going to go 2nd.
Okay, wait a second. Now, are we talking production? Because then, I mean, we do have a more offensive game and have had a more offensive game in the past 20 years. So let's take that into account. Not that he's just a great offensive player, but his numbers.
It's not just the stats. He's a 2-time All-American and a 2-time SEC Player of the Year. Outside of Bernard King, I think he's the only other player, right, from Tennessee to be a 2-time SEC Player of the Year.
Okay, can I change it, though, a little bit?
Okay,
you're building a team. Is he in the top 5 picks on your team?
See my starting 5 for Tennessee basketball.
All time.
So starting point guard is obviously Ernie Grunfeld. We agree with that, right? If you're building a team, Ernie Grunfeld plays point guard, right?
Yes, but Tony White's an emotional second stringer.
Right, exactly. So Tony White backup, Ernie Grunfeld the starter. Chris Lofton is your starting shooting guard. Am I right?
Yes.
All right. Dale Ellis has got to be your starting small forward. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay,
Especially the way he played in the NBA. He was more of a post player in college, but in the NBA, he was a shooter, so no doubt.
Okay, so this is where you have to leave Grant Williams out. And this is so unfair to him because I might have him second all time. But the power forward position is then reserved for one Bernard King, and you can't have him ahead of Bernard King. And neither one of them can play center. Reggie Johnson, I think, would be center on the all-time Tennessee basketball team. And so I'd go Reggie Johnson, Bernard King, Dale Ellis, Chris Lofton, and Ernie Grunfeld. So I would not start Grant Williams. He'd be my second-string power forward, but he is the second best player of all time in Tennessee history. He is tied in, locked into that power forward spot because King nor Grant Williams is big enough to play center. So you have to have a center in there.
Well, and you also would lose some. You would think you would lose some of King's shooting ability if he had to play center on the offensive end. I think you'd want him to be a stretch 4, and that opens it up to what kind of center do you even want? I mean, do you want a defensive center, a Stevie Hamer, a Doug Roth? Do you want those type of guys? Kevin Nash at center. But I mean, in all seriousness, though, if you have that type of team that can shoot from the perimeter, do you want that guy? Kind of like a Draymond Green. I know Draymond has some offensive skills, but a Draymond Green, a Bill Laimbeer. I'm just throwing guys out there that were defensive presence.
You need somebody that can clean up the boards down low, I think, at that point. And that's where Reggie Johnson would come in. I think Reggie Johnson is probably the best center in Tennessee basketball history. So the best true center. So I would go with him.
Well, now John says Tony White and Ron Slay are my emotional lift from the bench. Yes. So I would totally second unit this. You remember when UNLV did that one year? They just subbed in like a whole five new dudes would come in. So I don't know that I'd do 5, but my 3 would be Tony White, Ron Slay, Grant Williams. That's the mass sub that comes in at the second TV timeout. And then I'm gold. I'm in good shape there.
I got 4 because we have to throw Allen Houston in there too. And so
I got Allen. Do we not have Allen Houston as a starter?
Are you starting him over Chris Lofton or Dale Ellis?
I've got to start Allen Houston over. I'm confused. Okay,
wait.
Okay, Ernie, here's my 5. Let me be real clear.
Okay.
Ernie, the 2 Lofton, the 3 Allen Houston, because I'm shooting a lot of threes. I do this in NBA Live with my son, by the way, all the time. I go small ball all the time. Okay. And then Bernard King at the 4, which for my taste is a little bit big for a 4, but he can shoot. And then the 5, I'm wide open. I don't think it really matters.
Well, go with me.
Or maybe I go Bernard King at center, and then I get another shooter in there.
I mean, then
you know who we haven't discussed that, as far as pure physical ability, can get you a 2 when it's got to happen. Was not great at defense, but was great at playing passing lanes. Vincent Yarbrough.
Oh, Vincent Yarbrough, in terms of raw talent, I agree. That's raw talent, though, and I'm going this based on production. If you move King at center, you have to put Grant Williams at power forward. You absolutely have to. His production was incredible. Again, 2-time SEC Player of the Year, 2-time All-American, SEC regular season champion. Led Tennessee to a #1 ranking with 30 wins. How do you you got to put Grant Williams in there. I mean, he's the most productive player in Tennessee history since Bernard King.
Okay, now let me make it tougher on you because I'm enjoying this. This is fun stuff. All right, you got to do this without Bernard King and Ernie Grunfeld and Dell Ellis. You've got to do this since 1990 on.
You actually made it a heck of a lot easier for me.
Really?
Yeah, because I can start Tony White at point guard. Easy.
Well, he's mid-80s, but I'll give you that.
Oh, you're right. No. I'm gonna go.
I'll give you the Whizzer, because that was that and Johnny Jones. Those were my first two favorite Tennessee players. So you're getting the Dave.
No, I'm sticking with your rule.
Okay.
And I'm starting C.J. Watson at point guard at that point.
Ooh.
C.J. Watson labored for 3 years under the worst coaching in the history of basketball with Buzz Peterson. Horrible coach. And then he spends 1 year under Bruce Pearl and he thrives. He ends up getting like a 6-7 year NBA career out of that. I will never forget, I was at a Grizzly game. It must have been about 10, 15 years ago. And CJ was playing for Golden State. I go and I meet CJ Watson's uncle, who was like sitting in the stands and was like, yeah, Buzz was a bad dude. But just they had nothing nice to say about Buzz. And Watson apparently from Vegas, but went to Tennessee because his family's from Nashville. And they just loved Pearl. So I got TJ Watson as my starting point guard.
Okay, I'll have CJ Watson as my starting point. Now, we're saying since 90 on. And this is all because Grant Williams, if you're just tuning in, please hit the like button. Grant Williams was named VP of the Players Union. So it'd be great to have him from a leadership perspective. But if we're talking pure talent, I'd go CJ since 1990. I'd go CJ1. I would go...
The 2 and 3 are easy.
Lofton is your 2. Vincent's your 3.
No, Alan Houston.
Oh, man, where am I putting? I want to get Vincent in there. Okay, so Allen's your 3. You're right. And then at the 4, who you got at the 4 and the 5?
I mean, 4 is easy at this point. It's Grant Williams because it's Grant Williams. And at this point, here's
the 5, Stevie Hamer?
What? No, here's one. The winningest player in Tennessee basketball history, Wayne Chisholm.
No.
Wayne Chisholm, man.
No.
Come on. What? Okay. Wayne Chisholm, Isaiah Victor, CJ Black, Brandon Crump. Brandon Crump never went anywhere, though. So I'm just naming some true centers. Tennessee wasn't that deep at center. If you want to go wide and not like linked, Jarnell Stokes. A couple years under Quanzo Martin.
Okay. All right. I'm not.
There's not a lot of height that you can. There's not a lot of productive centers from this time that you can really go with.
We got to get Slay Dog in there somehow. He joins us each and every
week.
Wednesday.
Slay has some length. He could probably play the 5. And he was SEC Player of the Year.
I'll text him and see if he can play the 5. I don't remember him playing the 5 with that group, but he probably had to because that was in Hathaway had the blood clot issue.
Well, Isaiah Victor was still on the team though, and then after Isaiah Victor, Brandon Crump came in, and Marcus Hazlett was. Oh, what about Hazlett at center?
Incredible physical talent. I didn't think was ever. I could go Hazlett at center. You just don't. You don't have to worry about him scoring, which in this team you wouldn't have to.
Howard before Dwight Howard.
Yeah. Wow, great comparison. Portions of the program brought to you by Craft Treats. Craft Treats, man, crafttreats.com. Use the promo code Off the Hook. That's the promo code Off the Hook and get 20% off. I highly recommend their chill pills that helps with your pet's anxiety. Also will help with your pet's arthritis and digestive issues, but they've got non-CBD treats as well. That's crafttreats.com. Crafttreats.com. Use the promo code Off the Hook, the promo code Off the Hook. Somebody said Fulkerson. With this group we've got, though, no, that's not terrible. A defensive presence.
Rick Barnes had to move him to the. Fulkerson had one. I'm going to say this about Fulkerson because I think we all love him because of how committed he was to Tennessee. Fulkerson had 1 2-month run before the pandemic hit in 2020, where nobody really thought anything of him, and he was inserted into the lineup, and he caught everybody off guard. Teams figured out how to play him after that, and he was never the same, which is why Barnes had to move him back to the bench last year. So
I thought you were going to say that everybody thought he had COVID.
No.
So they stayed away from him. It's like, don't get close to that guy.
I've heard rumors that's why Magic Johnson was kind of effective on the Dream Team, by the way.
Oh, my gosh. It may have been.
Clyde Drexler said that, not me.
Yeah. And Karl Malone had some choice words about that. By the way, Karl Malone, wasn't he on the slam dunk committee thing? Have we forgotten?
How is he allowed at the NBA?
I don't know. Have we forgotten about him dating like a 15-year-old?
Oh, it was 12. It was 12. She was
12?
And he was 20.
Oh, that's even grosser. All right.
Had a baby by her and then refused to take care of they decided not to press charges because they saw his NBA career and they're like, we need money to take care of the baby. And then he fought having to take care of that baby his entire NBA career.
That happened a lot. That happened to Larry Bird.
Yeah, but Larry Bird, it wasn't an underage. It wasn't a 12-year-old.
No, it wasn't. And she looks just like him, the poor lady. So, I mean, it's like if you bumped into her randomly in Phoenix, you'd say, "Oh, you're Larry Bird's daughter." And so, and Michael Jordan has a daughter in Knoxville, but he did take care of her financially. Anybody know that?
And he's also Buzz Peterson's best friend. Sorry.
Never hung out with him, but yeah, I was wondering if anybody else knew that. But
Michael Jordan's or Buzz Peterson out here, the ultimate clout chaser.
Yes. Okay, so we got a Skylar McBee could be your shooting 4.
Not over Chris. Oh, at the 4.
Yeah, so we're going super small. That's what we're going to do. And John said, "Love Tony when I was a kid." Me too. I mean, my 2 first favorite players were Tony White in basketball and Johnny Jones in football, running back. And that was the mid '80s. So I'm like 10 years old, and I'm starting to gravitate towards athletics. So, all right. So, I wanted to let's switch gears a little bit. Grant Williams. If you didn't see the dunk contest, some dude that may live on your street won it. He's a no name. He is like 6'2", and he can jump through the gym and did a 740, which is the first time I've seen that. I mean, when do we get to the point where we're doing like 3 spins? I don't know, but it could happen. So the most unlikely great players in UT history. Now, do you just want to go basketball here or go football or the whole 9 yards?
Well, since this is kind of a Grant Williams transition, I was going to go both because the story with Grant Williams is he was an Ivy League kid. He had 3 Ivy League offers. His mom works for NASA. Super nerd if you've ever covered him, and then became a 2-time All-American. So he's like the Josh Dobbs of college basketball, and Josh Dobbs is on the list for me.
Okay, so most unlikely player to emerge in Tennessee athletics. Let me get your thoughts on the message boards. Go ahead and post that right now because I got to be honest with you, I'm gonna need some help because with football in particularly, I covered the guys with the most stars, right, Caleb? Because they got the most attention.
You covered the era that was loaded with talent.
Yeah, and I'm really having trouble thinking of a guy that came in and I was totally stunned that he was good. So I'm going to keep thinking about that. As far as basketball, now I do have a couple. Skylar McBee was one that I was going to throw out there. Another one that I was going to throw out there that I thought was really good was Del Baker, because Del Baker got the offer and joined Tennessee's team the year before his brother, Vincent Yarbrough. So I always thought that was just kind of a throw-in that they had to get him. They also hired those guys as a high school coach. So I just thought Del Baker was a throw-in, but turned into be a very good player. Aaron Green, I think, was a very good player. And Jawan Smith, I didn't think that he would be on the same par. I'm not saying he was as good as Chris Lofton, but he was on the same level of being a great shooter, just not quite as good. But man, I'm struggling with football message board. Help me, please, because I'm having trouble thinking of a guy that just kind of came out of nowhere.
Well, I have to give you a shout out for Jawan Smith. I think that's the ultimate overachiever. I don't even think he was, I remember Tennessee basketball recruiting, and I just went back and looked back at 2004. He wasn't even on the list of their commitments that year. Like, the guy was just a country kid from Cleveland. No, I just went back and looked, and it's just came out of nowhere. And he never played that last year under Buzz Peterson. And then Bruce Pearl puts him in against, ironically, Rick Barnes in Texas, which was, remember that big win over Texas, his first signature win at Tennessee? Bruce Pearl throws Jawan Smith in, and Jawan Smith gets red hot shooting the ball. The next year, Jawan Smith is starting next to Chris Lofton and is quite honestly look, Chris Lofton was the best player, and then Tyler Smith came, but Juwan Smith was the leader of those teams. He was kind of the heart of those two teams. And like that, he's the best overachiever, I think. And I know Fred hates the term overachieving. Juwan Smith was an overachiever. That was a legitimate overachiever.
Yeah, Fred will remind you that he ran a 10-2 in the 100 meters, so that's not an overachiever. I cannot come up with one in football.
Oh, I got a football one. It's more your time than mine, but Chris White, 1985.
See, that I didn't know players top to bottom then. So, like, I knew Johnny Jones, but I didn't know. I mean,
Chris White stepped in at safety and had, 8 interceptions, came an All-American.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Daryl Dickey himself, too.
Well, I was going to say Daryl Dickey, and the other one who had Tennessee's all-time interception record. How about Tim Priest?
It's hard for me to judge interceptions from like that time because it was like,
well,
but
I don't know what kind of recruit he was either.
That's true.
So I'm having a lot of trouble.
What about Juwan Jennings moving? What about Juwan Jennings at wide receiver? Remember, Jennings was
I saw Jennings. I saw Jennings in high school, and he was playing quarterback, and I thought that guy is a deer. I mean, he runs like a deer, and I was. It's funny that came to my mind a couple of minutes ago, but I wasn't really surprised. I will give you one. I'll give you two. Both in the defensive backfield. I thought Jonathan Hefney and Jabari Greer both had size issues, and I thought that would prevent them from being fantastic players, but it didn't. They were both very good players. Jabari Greer went on to a great career in the NFL as well. I'll tell you one that I had underrated that showed up on camp that I was like, whoa, because – when Kevin Burnett signed with Tennessee, I thought of all the great linebackers before him, and I thought, with the Al Wilsons of the world, I thought there's no way he can compete with those guys, right? Wouldn't you have thought that? And then I remember they used to have freshman days when they would open camp, and you'd have 2 days just devoted to freshmen. And he did this speed agility drill with Jabari Greer, and he hung with him, and he's 40 pounds heavier. So I was like, oh, okay, that guy's got crazy physical ability. Jabril Wilson is a good one. Junior college guy that had a nose for the football. Good job, John. Very, very good job.
Laid one of the greatest hits I've ever seen, too, against Kentucky. Physical guy.
I remember interviewing Larry Slade about him. I said, what makes him so good? Because he made some plays in some scrimmages when they were open. And he said, he didn't mean it mean. He goes, are you watching? That he's just around the football, had that nose for the football. I'll tell you another one that I think we say this too often because a player just happens to be Caucasian. I think we get in those stereotypes. Will Overstreet.
See, I have a hard time with Will Overstreet, and Bernard Jackson was the other side, right?
Yes.
I think you and I could have played defensive end on that team with who was in the middle.
Well, but if you remember Bernard Jackson, his nickname was Godzilla or something, and he was supposed to be the best defensive end that Tennessee had gotten in a number of years or since Sean Ellis or whatever was the case. So on the flip side, to have Will Overstreet outperform him, that was definitely a surprise from their freshman year forward. So if I can kind of couch it a little bit like that, I would say that I was surprised.
What about this one? So I don't know if you can call it unlikely good player because he was a starter, but I'm going to be mean here and say he never should have been starting. And I think there was just some likability factor with him. But Ryan Carl.
Oh, Ryan Carl's good. Ryan Carl's good. I'll give you another one that sounds crazy in retrospect, but I didn't think he had the size, was Raynoch Thompson. I didn't think he was the way he hit people. When I saw early scrimmages, I thought that guy's body is not going to hold up. And it did. And it did through the NFL and a decent career in the NFL. So while I thought he was every bit as athletic as Al Wilson and the other guys on that team, I did not think that he had the size to have a long career, and he did. So Raynoch Thompson, in a weird way, kind of maybe fits your mold, maybe.
Yeah. Do you think maybe? I wonder if you think, because you're talking about you talk about how you got caught off guard with size with Raynoch Thompson and Kevin Burnett, and I'm thinking this was right around the time where you've told me that John Chavis started recruiting smaller linebackers to hang with Spurrier's offense, and that's how he figured out Spurrier's offense. So it seems like Raynoch Thompson and Kevin Burnett may have been recruited specifically for that, right?
Oh, my man gets a shout out. Yeah, with Burnett, he was faster than I thought. With Raynoch Thompson, he was not as big, and I didn't think he would have a long career. But John is my man. Steve Johnson, my broadcasting buddy. We had classes together. And yes, Steve Johnson was on a team that was loaded at defensive back. He caught the interception that wrapped up the Fiesta Bowl for the national championship, if you remember. Steve Johnson was not as talented as the other guys, but had a fantastic career. And I still remember the disgusting sweaty hug he gave me after the 98 Florida game. And broadcasting major. We had a lot of classes together. And Steve Johnson is a very, very good one. He's one of those guys that on pretty much any other team or any other era, Caleb, other than 98, 99, he's the starter. Hands down. He is your starter, right?
Yeah, definitely. I would agree. But he was starting with what was that secondary that year? Because you had Dwayne Goodrich, Fred White, Deion Grant. God, that's a who's who of.
And Steve was the other corner.
He was the other one, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. So they were pretty darn loaded. And so that's a very good one, John. John's throwing high heat today. There's no question about it.
You know who would have been on this list, by the way, is we would be talking about him more than any of these others, would have been Inky Johnson, if not for the injury.
Yep, 3-star.
Yep.
Definitely would have been. And the one we haven't mentioned, Travis Stevens.
Yeah, redshirted just so he could have a year to himself to play.
Yeah,
and,
was ridiculed by one media member to his face that may have been on this program that didn't think he could get it done against Florida, and he ran for 220-plus yards.
That media member was not me.
No, that media, not this specific program, but has been on this program maybe Friday. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, and we have to be honest here. Stevens had a good cut and good breakaway speed, but to be objective about it, that might have been the best offensive line of Vollmer's entire tenure at Tennessee that year.
That's true, but he had a little neat thing going where I thought he saw holes and he was a patient runner.
He was. And he was right. And remember, Will Bartholomew may have been the best blocking fullback. That was the time when the blocking fullback was still a thing. And Will Bartholomew and John Finlayson at tight end, they were starters at fullback and tight end specifically because of how great of blockers they were. So Stevens really had 7 elite blockers that he was running behind at the time.
Agreed. Portions of the program and this discussion, which was a lot of fun, brought to you by Andy Mason Real Estate. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Andy Mason and his office have over 40 years of experience in Knoxville real estate. They'll save you thousands. Don't accidentally blow a few thousand or tens of thousands. You have got to go to AndyMasonRealEstate.com. It's very easy to fill out the form on his website that, hey, I built. And you can get in touch with Andy Mason, and you'll be so glad you did. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. And coming up, I want to get to 2 things. I want to get to Tennessee's newest commitment. And do you want to let's save the Jeremy Pruitt thing for tomorrow. There's news breaking about why that whole thing is dragging on. And I do want to get into that, but I'd like to call some sources before we really dive into that. But it is dragging on. So Tennessee picks up a commitment. Going to give you a breakdown on him. And then also what happened to Tennessee's baseball team over the weekend. Hang tight with me. 2 minutes. Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker off the Hook Sports.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center. Ah.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassy, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassy's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassy Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here, Viles Automotive on Calhoun Drive. I've been selling cars here in East Tennessee for 27 years. In that time, I've come to realize it's not about the car. It's about you, the customer. So I'm here to take care of you just like family. Good credit, bad credit, you name it, we can get you taken care of. If we don't have it, we can find it for you. We go across the country to get any vehicle that you want. And here at Viles Automotive, we don't believe in fake numbers. We just give you great deals. And as always, we want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm.
And finalists for best law firm and best personal injury firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down.
Our family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Travis just made me laugh. He said the German kid, D-line, his name escapes me. You know who he's referring to?
I'm going to say Konstantin Ritzman.
It is. And way after his career was over, somebody called me one time on a talk show in Knoxville and said, "Hey, man, have you heard what's going on with Konstantin Ritzman?" And I said, "No, what's going on?" And he said, "Well, nothing. I was just wondering if he was playing pros in NFL, the Germinator. He hated that nickname. If he was playing in the pros or he was in NFL Europe." And I was like, well, that's kind of a random question. So this caller called every single day for almost a year, and it was an ongoing joke. He would just work in Konstantin Ritzman. So he would like say something to the effect of, "Hey, Tennessee basketball struggled over the weekend. They could have used a leader like Konstantin Ritzman. What'd you think of the game?" And for a year, Caleb, he called in every day and worked in a Konstantin Ritzman reference.
That's actually kind of hilarious.
He didn't miss a day.
Well, I remember Tennessee lost every member of their front four in 2001 to 2002. Konstantin Ritzman was going to be the leader of that front four. He suffers his season-ending injury. And then they lost every member of the front four again from 2002 to 2003 from the starting line. And the 2003 front four was better than the 2002 one.
I'll tell you this, JT Mapu was better than I thought he would be. And it taught me that if it's a Polynesian player, and you should like this if you're rooting for Nico, those Polynesians got that dog in them. And I've interviewed I can't remember his name suddenly, but he
was a 5-star though.
Oh, he was. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then he should have been good. But when I saw him, he was a little small. He was like a fire plug type of guy, so I didn't necessarily think that he would be fantastic. Okay, so portions of the program brought to you by Vassy Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive. Vassy Lawn and Garden Whether you're in Knoxville, Nashville, or Chattanooga, they have the industrial, commercial, and residential mowers that you need. Scott came up with 3 more for basketball. Tyler Smith, JP Prince, Wayne Chisholm, that should be in the discussion of the all-time 5. Not overachievers, Caleb, but should be in the discussion. They're probably on the 12 team, the 12-man rotation.
Maybe post 1990, not all time.
Oh, yeah. Post 1990. Yeah.
I mean,
right.
So JP Prince, funny enough, went to my rival high school. I was in high school when he was in high school, and he was Gatorade Player of the Year. And at White Station, my school Ridgeway beat them 2 out of 3 that year, and then went to go win state champions. While White Station did. Just throwing that out there, trying to troll JP Prince a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah, which he went to the same high school Dane Bradshaw went to in Memphis, White Station. JP Prince was an amazing, if we're talking lockdown defender, I mean, he's got to be the best perimeter defender Tennessee. He's in the top 5. I mean, JP Prince was a lockdown defender.
He was very, very good.
Liability on offense, though.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so I've changed directions a little bit. So I want to get into this Jeremy Pruitt thing. So this continues to go on, and it's now been 2 years since this NCAA investigation began, and a write-up by Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel as to why, and I want to get into that. But the backdrop of Tennessee having a player who's not able to participate in this weekend's baseball series, and he's been on campus since August. I think when it's all said and done, you're just talking about the NCAA being an incredibly inefficient organization is the bottom line. And I think we'll come back to that after we hash some of these things out. But as far as Jeremy Pruitt, and this continues to go on, let me tell you what I've been told. So part of the reason this is drug on as long as it has is because Tennessee was close to being willing to wrap it up during the beginning of the football season. Then they realized suddenly that, hey, this football team's pretty good. It could be in postseason play. So the last thing you want at that point is a postseason ban, because you don't want to be selected at the college football playoff. Now, nobody thinks this is going to happen at UT, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So that is part of the reason I was told that this has been drug out. So Adam with the Knoxville News Sentinel didn't really reveal any news, just kind of a get you up to date thing. But this has drug on for 2 years. Don't think for a second that recruiters for opposing schools aren't continuing to bring this up, because they are. I can promise you that. But what do you make of the amount of time this is taking, Caleb? And does that mean Tennessee fans should be any more or less concerned because it's going on for so long?
I think to cover their bases and be absolutely sure, I think the reason this drug out, so Tennessee, like you said, extended the deadline. The NCAA is now past their deadline when they were supposed to respond, because they were supposed to in January. It sounds more so because of, I guess, client versus NCAA privilege, that there were some negotiations going on behind the scenes. My read into it is that the biggest one is Tennessee is actually still the reason it's being drugged out, because they're fighting one thing the NCAA is trying to accuse them of, which is part of the NCAA's, report is there was a lack of oversight by the university, and the university is trying to claim no wrongdoing. And according to this report, basically, that we read today, it sounds like their evidence for that is that Jeremy Pruitt's wife, Casey Pruitt, was involved in some of the recruiting shenanigans. And because Casey Pruitt was not a university employee, they could sit there and say, well, she wasn't within our oversight range. So whatever she did, we can't be held responsible for.
Well, and maybe Jeremy Pruitt knew that. He doesn't seem like the brightest person in the world, so he probably didn't. But maybe he just needed somebody to run some cash over to a prospect. I don't agree with that logic at all. I think you could have a lack of institutional control, which would be the most serious charge against Tennessee. The rest of them were very manageable. But I think you could have a lack of institutional control, and whether or not she's involved or not, it doesn't matter one iota. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think the NCAA has any teeth. I don't think anything significant is going to happen to Tennessee. So I'm saying that first, right, Caleb? I'm on the record. But do I think there was a lack of institutional control, which is the type of thing that could affect this program moving forward and not just punish those previously? Heck yeah. Heck yeah, I think there was a lack of institutional control. Philip Fulmer was the athletic director. He's not been involved by any allegations. However, did he look the other way because he wanted things to work out? I've been led to believe that. So that's lack of institutional control in and of itself. The fact that he wasn't included in any of these allegations is a good thing for Tennessee. And I think they dodged a bullet there. But if it's lack of institutional control and you got like 5 coaches, you've got a couple of personnel guys, and you've got a coach's wife, then that to me is the definition of lack of institutional control. All that being said, I don't think the NCAA has teeth to punish them, but I don't see how you can look at something that widespread and it not be lack of institutional control by definition.
Dave, I got a question. This came to my mind because you're right. It's obvious Fulmer was looking the other way. Maybe because he wasn't a guy cut out for an athletic director job. Like we've talked about, you need administrators. And
yeah,
I wonder if this is hurting Tennessee. They fired Jimmy Pruitt and the assistant coaches for calls, as they should have. They allowed Philip Fulmer to ceremonially retire. And I think doesn't he still get a severance package for his retirement? Maybe they're in a little bit of trouble because they should have thrown Fulmer under the bus the way
I
they
think he got like a $350,000 buyout.
Yeah, maybe they should have come down as hard on Philip Fulmer as they did on Pruitt. They didn't want to because of what Fulmer meant to the university's football program. But I mean, I think they might have had to do that. Do you wonder if that's working against them a little bit on this? That they let Fulmer, they threw Pruitt under the bus, but we're going to let Fulmer walk away with this, retirement package and ceremonially retire and not humiliate him because we like him too much because of what he's meant to the university, even though in this capacity, he was let's call it what it is. As an athletic director, he was an abject failure. Just an abject failure.
If you're asking me, would it have been better to absolutely hammer Philip Fulmer publicly? Yes, it would have. But I also understand all that he's done for the university. So even though he's made some very bad missteps in his career, I wouldn't let those missteps define him. I'm close, but I wouldn't let those define him. J-Mac said Pruitt and every one of the staff who committed those violations should have been heavily fined, immediately suspended from coaching without pay, and banned from coaching for a certain amount of years. Now, I agree with all of that. And I will say this along J-Mac's line of thinking. It makes no sense to punish the incoming football staff who did absolutely nothing when it was the previous staff who committed the violations. Punish the outgoing previous staff, not the incoming one. Totally agree with that. And you're also talking about not only a change in head coach, athletic director, complete administration from the top up, president of the university. So this is a completely different group. What does it say about the severity of the allegations that Jeremy Pruitt has now found a home in college football again? Because I didn't think that he would ever be back in college football. So now, what's that?
Has he?
Well, I mean, there's talk by Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports that Alabama coach Nick Saban has reached out to Jeremy Pruitt and had reached out to him for the defensive coordinator position at one point. The fact that he is reaching out to him, does that say that Nick Saban believes that these allegations aren't that serious? Because I thought Jeremy Pruitt, enjoy the NFL. You're still going to make $300,000 or $400,000 a year, but your time in college is over. But there's been some contact, so it makes me wonder, you're a Tennessee fan, are you looking at Nick Saban, who's kind of the czar of college football on that level? And if he's reaching out to Pruitt, but I could take that a step further, you didn't hire Pruitt. So, I mean, I'm asking you, I don't know exactly what that means that Pruitt was in contact. Maybe it means they didn't hire him because he was going to get a show cause. And by the way a show cause works, you don't ban coaches from coaching in college. But what happens is you can hire them and then you have to show cause that they won't do anything wrong or why they had a misstep previously so that you can hire them. So they don't get banned, but it is another step. And yeah, it's a pain in the rear, to be quite honest with you. And Jeremy Pruitt, why wouldn't you just go get somebody else? I just thought it was really interesting that they did reach out to Pruitt to replace Pete Golding, according to Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports. What does that tell you about Tennessee's investigation?
Well, let's not. We got to think about timelines here because a lot of this comes with timelines.
True.
The report that Saban reached out to Pruitt, it came out on January the 30th, I believe.
Right.
We were all led to believe the investigation was going to be wrapped up at the end of January. Probably Nick Saban believed that. And if I'm reading into this, I'm reading into it that he reached out to Pruitt just to say, hey, maybe I'll give you a shot. I'm about to find out in 2 days whether or not you have a show cause. And then it got pushed back 2 weeks, or now 3 weeks, or whatever we're into February. And at that point, Saban had to make the decision to go hire Kevin Steele. It could just be something as simple as, hey, look, we're about to find out if you don't have a show cause. Are you interested in the D coordinator position at Alabama? It could be that. I do want to ask one question though, because everybody says, you shouldn't punish a team for previous players and coaches and things like that. And we all agree that was a dumb thing the NCAA had been doing for decades. I questioned of all fans who care about history and legacy of Tennessee football. Given that principle, are you willing to surrender the 1990 SEC championship to Steve Spurrier in Florida? Florida finished ahead of Tennessee that year, but they were on probation because of something that happened 4 years before. And if you ask Spurrier, he will tell you all the time that 1990 team got robbed, and that was his favorite team. Are you willing to surrender another SEC title to Florida on principle?
No, I don't think they are. With Pruitt not getting that job, listen, Nick Saban can call up Greg Sankey at any point. Okay, he can get the inside scoop. The fact that he was contacted and not hired makes me think that it's going to be pretty tough on Jeremy Pruitt, because I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm not a big fan of Bullethead. I wasn't when he was hired. And I will tell you that
that was his name.
Yeah, that's the nickname I came up with him for. But Jeremy Pruitt's a better hire than Kevin Steele. Hands down. And I'm going to tell you why. It's not an X's and O's thing. Because Nick Saban is going to handle the X's and O's on defense. And Jeremy Pruitt is a very, very good recruiter. So Kevin Steele is a good recruiter. Jeremy Pruitt is a very good recruiter. So there's a reason that he reached out to Jeremy Pruitt. There's also a reason he gave it to Kevin Steele instead of Jeremy Pruitt. Do I know why? No, I'm not going to pretend to tell you why. But I would wonder if it's Nick Saban thinks that he's going to get hammered, Jeremy Pruitt is, by the NCAA. Portions of the program brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. It's getting that time of year where it's going to warm up and some of those HVAC units out there are going to crash. I promise you that. You may not need a whole new unit. City Heating and Air Conditioning will tell you if you do, and they can save you some money as well. Tennessee with their fourth commitment of the 2024 class on Saturday. Marcus Goree Jr. announced he will be committing to Tennessee's football team. Goree chose Tennessee over a finalist of Colorado, who is offering everybody with Deion Sanders, Michigan, Michigan State, and Nebraska out of Bradley Central High School in Cleveland, Tennessee. It is a significant pickup. It's just a 3-star. But you don't want to lose a guy in your backyard. 6 foot, 170-pound cornerback. 56 tackles, 11 for a loss, 2 picks, a sack, and a forced fumble. So he joins a 4-star athlete, Jordan Eccles, a 4-star cornerback, Caleb Beasley, and 3-star defensive lineman Carson Gentle, who plays like a maniac, as 2024 commitment. So your thoughts on the pickup of Goree Jr. over the weekend, who announced his commitment at a very peculiar time. It's Saturday night at 9:30, I believe, just to keep us on our toes.
So, I mean, up to 6'1" as a safety sounds like, by the way, a lot of this I'm getting from our own Caleb Jaru, who does an amazing job recruiting. I just want to plug him every chance I get because you guys should all read the stuff he does on our site. He's amazing. Sounds like the talk with him is that the sample size of him as a cornerback or as a defensive back is limited. Sounds like he's very good at covering possession and tight ends, possession receivers and tight ends, kind of more physical receivers. His ability to cover guys in the slot, which are the speedier players and which is what safeties are typically asked to do, is up in the air, according to these reports. So, Dave, is that a red flag, or would you rather it be that, or would you rather it be the other way if you're getting a defensive back going into college?
Would I rather him be projected? Ask that question again. I'm not sure.
So the scouting report on him, and this is Caleb Jaru, who is citing 247 Sports Reporter, saying is that he has demonstrated a good job at covering physical possession receivers and tight ends. He hasn't shown any ability. They haven't even tried to put him on a slot receiver yet. Now, I feel like as a safety, you usually guard the slot receiver more than you guard possession receivers. Am I right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. I think this will answer your question. I'd rather have the guy who's a natural corner that I could move to safety. And I'm going to reference our guy, Fred White, again. Fred White, when he showed up to Tennessee, you think of him as a big, bulky safety, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
He wasn't that when he showed up to Tennessee. When he showed up to Tennessee, he ran the second fastest time in the 100 meters at Georgia, 10.21, I believe, in high school. And they immediately, when they saw they had so much depth at cornerback, they said, can you put on weight and play safety? And he said, absolutely, I can. New viewers on board, please hit the thumbs up like button. We appreciate it. So I would rather have the Fred Whites of the world that could show up and play safety, and you say, whoa, you have a bigger frame. Let's make you, show up and play corner. Say, whoa, you have a bigger frame. Let's move you to safety. I'd rather have that guy, and this guy sounds like that guy.
Okay. Yeah, he's technically listed as a safety on Rivals, but you're right. He sounds more like a corner the way he's described, being able to guard possession receivers. So sounds like his, it's hard with him because his measurables and his size haven't fully developed yet, and people don't know where that's going to be. That's why he's a 3-star. So he's one of those you could see transition to a 4-star next year. Although him committing to Tennessee could also have him transition to a 4-star given the politics of recruiting rankings.
Well, and he's the type of guy in Cleveland that's just down the road. So you wouldn't want him to get away to Michigan, especially with the transfer portal. Now, the transfer portal takes coaches out of tough positions like this, because let's say Tennessee was 50-50 on this guy, and you got Michigan coming in with offers, Colorado, all these other schools. So you suddenly have to make a call, right? You've got to say, I'm offering or not, or he's going to go somewhere else and I'm going to lose out on it. Well, with the transfer portal, go ahead and take it. And then if he can't play, put your arm around him and say, son, I think that there might be a better option for you elsewhere. This is happening. I had a player reach out to me that was on Tennessee's roster and said, I heard you talking about players if they were asked to leave. And I'm just going to tell you, I still love the university, and I don't want to besmirch them in any way. But, yes, I was asked to leave. That's college football nowadays. So it's kind of like you passed up a long a mid-range 2-point shot, and you take it to the rack, and you hope you get an and one. So that's what they're hoping for. They get a really good player. But at the end of the day, it's not like it takes up a scholarship for the next guaranteed 5 years. Kids are getting paid now. Kids can transfer. You put your arm around them. You say, buddy, I love you. I I just don't think this is the best fit for you. I think it's completely changed recruiting. So if they're 50-50 on him at all, and nobody's told me that, but he's not a highly touted player, then yeah, take him and make sure he doesn't go elsewhere because you have the in-state tie.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a smart move. And for people that want to complain about the politics of coaches doing that, I mean, this is the give and take of players getting paid, which I'm for, and players being allowed to transfer wherever they want and not honor their commitment. And I think they should be allowed to do that too. But if they're allowed to do that, then you can't complain if coaches and universities don't want to honor their commitment and their side of it. So it's their game at that point.
You're from Memphis, and the common thread among Memphis high school coaches is that Tennessee just didn't offer their guys in Memphis. And it really bothered a lot of Memphis coaches, and it further drove a wedge between UT and Memphis prospects. I'll give you another one. Patrick Willis, who's going to go into the Hall of Fame. That's a guy who John Chavis didn't think was fast enough to play on Tennessee's defense. So he caught all kinds of heat because that was an in-state guy. Back then, before transfers and you could transfer freely and before you're getting paid and all that, which you and I are both proponents of. Back then, if you didn't take an in-state guy that had offers from every other SEC school, as Patrick Willis almost did, at least Ole Miss, then you were looked at as you're not giving the in-state guy a chance. My argument to that was I defended Chavis, even though he wasn't a big Dave Hooker fan. I defended Chavis because I think you got to take who fits your scheme. And I thought he missed on Patrick Willis, and obviously he did. But to me, it doesn't matter if you're in-state or not. So if there's a Jonathan Crompton right across the border and he's technically North Carolina, do you lean towards a BJ Coleman because he's in-state who has less talent? I don't think so.
Yeah, I still question if BJ Coleman had less talent, though. I mean, he got stuck with. I feel like if BJ Coleman got to be coached by David Cutcliffe, I mean, that dude had a cannon for an arm.
David loved BJ.
Yeah.
Had David stayed, I believe it would have been BJ's job over Crompton, but Lane came out and immediately said that Crompton was going to be the starter. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'll say this. UT had one pipeline into Memphis, and that was Orange Mound Melrose, which was where Cedric Wilson, Andre Lott, and Mondre Dickerson all came out of. That was the one school they had. They were the premier football school. It was in a really rough part of town, and they churned out football talent like nobody's business. But you're right. The rest of the city, and it's funny you say that because Pruitt got a lot of flack for not focusing as heavily on in-state, particularly Nashville kids. And I know somebody who told me that Pruitt told him off the record, I hate to be prideful of my hometown, but basically Pruitt said the only part of the state that really has good football is Memphis, and it's hard for me to recruit those kids because other schools are fighting for them. And it's turned out to be right because I've been saying this for years. Nashville kids are super overrated football wise. They are so overhyped in their star ratings if you look at their production in college.
Yeah, I think at some point just the numbers are going to get to this critical mass point where you've got so many that they're going to produce 10 high-level prospects each and every year, which are probably pretty close to that.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, they haven't gone on and done tremendously well.
I think Jackson has better talent historically than Nashville. Jackson's been loaded with some talent.
Yeah. The only thing
Al Wilson.
Jackson. The only thing I know.
Too Tall Jones is from Jackson.
I did not know that. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, we'll close on a Cowboys note. We love the interaction on the message board. So don't worry about work. If you're at work, just go ahead and engage with us. We appreciate that. And for Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. We're with you each and every weekday. Download the app Off the Hook Sports. We'll talk to you tomorrow, and that should be fun. A special guest, I'm sure.